So this is a little bit of an annoying rule because it's a rule that we've seen before and you're going to see in many ways on your SAT, but it's a very twisted version of that. The first thing that makes it a little twisted is that we've got these parentheses, and it's very unusual to have all these commas near the parentheses. So you might be thinking, okay, it's definitely B. You're not allowed to put commas right next to parentheses. That's 2 punctuation marks in a row. But it is allowed. It just kind of depends on what's going on. Basically, what parentheses do is they provide extra information about something. So probably what's happening here is 13C is just like an abbreviation of carbon-13. So we're putting in parentheses, but it's got to directly follow the thing it's giving extra information about. And so putting a comma before the parentheses, kind of in between the description and the thing we're describing, that would be very unusual. That would be very odd. But putting it after the parentheses, that's okay. That is something you could see in your own writing or in just like academic places like newspapers and magazines. It may seem unusual. It may seem like you're breaking a rule, but that's okay. So it's not to say that D is the answer or B is the answer, but it does mean that A and C are probably not looking good because they have those extra commas before the parentheses. That's weird. That's uncommon. So I'm just going to cross them out to get rid of some stuff. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is some situation where that could happen. I just can't think of it. So I don't think it's going to happen on the SAT. So looking at the sentence then, we would need to maybe hopefully refine our thinking, predict this question better. What rule matters more than just these parentheses and commas? So let's take a look at the sentence. A study led by scientist Rebecca Kirby at the University of Wisconsin-Madison found that black bears that eat human food before hibernation have increased levels of a rare carbon isotope, carbon-13, due to the higher 13C levels in corn and cane sugar. Bears with these elevated levels were also found to have much shorter hibernation periods on average. So you might notice I didn't even read the parentheses, and that's because in my mind it's extra. So let me just get rid of it, shorten the sentence a little bit. But I also have this comma right before the blank. And so that's telling me there's some sort of interruption. But otherwise, this seems like the rule for appositives. We have basically 2 ways of describing the same thing. We have carbon-13, and that is a rare carbon isotope. So if you've seen my lesson on that rule, you might remember the way to go about it. If we have, it all depends on the order of these 2 things. So if we have the term first, then we're probably going to put the definition in 2 commas right after it. So that's one way of using appositives. But if it were reversed, if we had the definition first, then we probably wouldn't use any commas at all. We would just go right into the definition, into the term. So we might have to ask, okay, well, what's the term here? What's the more specific thing that you would like type into Wikipedia if you were trying to look it up? Okay, would you type in carbon-13 or would you type in a rare carbon isotope? Well, to me, it seems pretty obvious that carbon-13 is the more specific thing. So a rare carbon isotope, that's our definition. And so the term is going to go in that blank. And so that it seems like we're following this rule right here, a definition first, and then the term. So no commas. So maybe choice B. But wait a minute, there is a comma already there, right? So what's going on? Is 1 comma possible? What is happening? Well, this is a special case of the appositives rules. The real issue is that, and luckily for us, they gave us that comma, right? So this is the thing with all the grammar rules, is they are hard and set, but the SAT is very good at finding weird little situations where maybe it feels like the grammar rule is being broken, but what's actually happening is we are just using that same rule in a more unusual situation. So that's what's happening here. And luckily, because that comma is already there and unchangeable, we should sense something is off. So what's actually happening is we do have the definition first, then we're going to use 2 commas to separate out the term. So very similar to what we have at the top there. But the reason we end up going with the 2 commas, even though the definition is first, is we have the word before the definition. And so there's 3 words that we have to watch out for. An, and the. When we see these words starting the definition, it's kind of making the definition the main event of the sentence. And so that is going to affect how we think about the punctuation. So we do need 2 commas. That's going to force us into choice D here. We want to put the comma, like I said, after the parentheses because we almost have like an appositive within an appositive here. We have carbon 13, which is our term, which we are kind of following with another definition in a way, C13 or 13C, which is more description about that. So what we want to make sure we're doing then is recognizing that this carbon 13 piece is a separate interruption to the sentence. And we could read the sentence without it, right? We could say a study led by scientist Rebecca Kirby at the University of Wisconsin-Madison found that black bears that eat human food before hibernation have increased levels of a rare carbon isotope due to the higher 13C levels in corn and cane sugar. Now, that'd be weird in a sense because we wouldn't know what 13C is, so we are removing something that gives us the substance of the sentence, the topic of the sentence, but grammatically, we are not removing anything essential. The 2 commas around carbon 13 tell us that this is an extra piece that we are interrupting with so we get more information, and then we're going back to the main sentence. And that's really what appositives tend to be about. Is the thing that we're doing, is this definition we're putting in there an interruption, or is it part of the flow of the sentence? And that is where the first 2 terms, the first 2 rules, I guess, kind of fit. And then what the SAT did here is they added this little extra piece that is going to make things more difficult for us. But this is a rare thing that they did, so we probably won't see it again. But luckily, if we do, we will kind of notice that break, and the whole point of a comma is to give us that break. So it really does depend on the way that the definition is structured. So look out for words like and the that start out the definition. That probably means we're going to need some comma at some point in the sentence. So always adjust based on the structure of the sentence, but generally speaking, when the SAT tests appositives, it's more like the 2 things in red in that box, and so you can safely stick to that rule for most cases.